Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session for drivers to accelerate buyer engagement and business growth. My name is Andres Marquez. I lead the digital marketing portfolio here at Dun& Bradstreet, and I'm happy and honored to introduce our speaker, Zarina, today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to quickly cover some housekeeping. We will run for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So please make sure you submit your comments and questions in the chat bar. I also wanted to do a quick recap on today's sessions. So we had Ryan Dye, CEO of Digital Marketer, go over some good strategies to winning in a digital first world. We also had a panel where our CMO, Stacy Grainer, along with some amazing guests from Follows, Bombora, and Zarina herself, went over creating account-based experiences for a cookieless world. Plus, we had some of our customers sharing their success stories as well. So if you missed any of those sessions, we'll have the recordings available at the end of the day. So please make sure you come back and check them out. Without further ado, let me introduce Zarina Stanford, Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at Rackspace Technology. Zarina has in-depth field experience in the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Japan, and other growth markets such as Eastern Europe and Africa. She's currently authoring a self-leadership book titled Dare to Grow, and she's a recognized growth catalyst herself. So she's passionate about design thinking, agile marketing, and purpose. Zarina, welcome. It's a truly honor having you here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here, and especially to talk about one of my favorite topics, growth. I think, as you guys also saw on the abstract, I'm really excited because we have several secret weapons to make this the most exciting time to be in marketing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and launch into the conversation and look forward to having a Q&A here shortly as well. So many years ago, this is actually a picture of me in India some years ago, talking to my team who at the time was driving performance marketing. We had a conversation about the importance of being end-to-end, thinking from the full spectrum perspective. And hence, not a surprise that when I first came on board here at Rackspace, I introduced these four, what we refer to as now as the end-to-end growth multipliers. And let me just quickly share with you what they are. Well, brand, no doubt not to be surprised, right? Without that, you can't really drive a lot of the conversation to be relevant. Demand, key and core to all of the things that we do, whether it is for existing customers, new customers, and partners, and ourselves. There is, of course, also that of influencers and advocacies, customers, partners, and the likes. And I also introduced a fourth one that I like to just kind of appeal to all of you. If you hadn't included this as part of your overall growth equation, I strongly suggest you to consider that. And that is your employees and the culture and this force of power that, like here at Rackspace, we call ourselves wreckers. And wreckers and the force of wreckers and what we believe in and how we can and how many we can reach out to is amazing. To that, one of the exciting things is that if you are leading a team on marketing, if you're leading, whether you're CMO, head of marketing, whatever role that you have, I'm going to challenge all of us to think first and foremost our roles as chief growth officers, because that's really what we're doing here. And with that, let's see how these growth multipliers all come together to turn into the reality. And what I really probably should have done on the top of the slide is actually call this not just marketing as the growth multiplier as a function, but marketing and sales. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But looking at brand, demand, advocacy, and the employees and culture in totality and in a single thread is where the multiplication comes in, right? Doing either and focusing on either one of the two of them, I think is going to be suboptimal. But if you really calibrate all of this together, that's when the multiplier effect happens. And on top of that, down on the bottom of this slide, and you can see these are the three rules of being on my team and being in marketing, what we do. I kind of started out when I was late years at IBM and then at SAP, and then continued to really prosper this thinking. First and foremost, our job as marketers and in our domain is about being relevant. Relevant to internal stakeholders, external, what have you. Getting things done. We cannot just have great ideas and great grandiose visions, but not put them to reality. So getting things done is important. There is a third part, and just also because the fact that what you do and what we do collectively, we have to have fun doing so. Because when all this happens, that's when we can really architect the right customer and employee experience, which leads to growth. And in our case here at Rackspace, as many of you know, hopefully, and thank for you, those of you who are customers of ours, that you're familiar with our fanatical experience. That is our brand promise. That is what we deliver. As the choice of multi-cloud providers, that is what we do. And we got to always be home right at, and that's what drives growth. So let's talk very specifically, and in the spirit of the summit, what does it mean to be relevant? In a very simplistic, and I'm going to put this as almost like marketing 101, as to first and foremost, we got to understand our audience. Who are we trying to be relevant to? And where are they? Who are they? And things of that nature. And we talked a little bit about the panel discussion earlier with Stacy and team as well, and Itai and Mike as well. However, they're not the only one. If you think about our targets or universe of targets, if you will, many of us, thousands of us are trying to be relevant to them too. So how do we differentiate? How do we stand out to be different? Is a major part of the magic of what we have to do. And then also the pragmatics. When do we engage? When do we want to be relevant? Where do they want to be relevant to? And where do they hang, most importantly? And leading up to, we have a lot of science and math and creativity and innovation. And that's why I believe that our trade is that of art and science. And you could call that a craft, right? This is what we do. But one other thing, back to the very first slide that you saw in terms of end-to-end. This is a very important line that we're connecting the dot to close the loop. Because if we don't learn from the analytics and from the insights and from the experience and from whatever inputs that we're getting from those whom we're trying to be relevant, we are not going to stay relevant. So I think that's really important. Now to bring home, I think, and why I said earlier in terms of, this is a great time, and it really started about 10, 12 years ago to be the awesome place to be the driver for being relevant for companies, i.e. in marketing and sales to have some extent as well. And that is the role of technology. We now have technology that we can put to use, whether it's sometimes because we just think about it, kind of like their intent, and picking up on different, digital breadcrumbs and the like. I think this wave, and there is no linear thinking in terms of ranging technology being used for automating, for propensity and intent, for placement, for analytics, and all of that. But it's all magic as well as technology now we have at our hands and on our fingertips. And sometimes we don't even have to know that it's happening, and yet it's happening to give us the sense of being more targeted and being more relevant. And know where whom we want to be relevant are hanging. Where are they going? And so to that, just for fun, I do want to ask you guys to think about, in your perspective, are we artists or are we technologists? I'll let you decide. So I'm here to kind of share with you a little bit of our own very experience here at Rackspace. We really started, and I have to really take a lot of pride and shout out to the team here. Right before my arrival, they've already know the fact that we have to major focus on quality and on outcome. Here at Rackspace, what do we mean by our outcome? It isn't just about how many people visited our site. It isn't just how many seats do we have filled and how many MQLs. We go all the way beyond what is being seen here on the slide on revenue and bookings, and most importantly, happy customers and partners and employees, I would say. So to that, the team has engaged what was formerly Lattice and now part of the Rev.Up portfolio to really help us drive the audience profiling and targeting, lead scoring, and the like. I'm going to give you the headline first, and then we'll step back on what we did. The first part of the headline is that we were here, and this is when I came on board, and we really started to hone in on what does success look like. It isn't, again, just how many prospects, how many leads we've generated. To me, that's just early indicators. That's not enough to really get us home to what the business outcomes that we need to drive to, which leads to another point I want to make a little bit later. So we began to look at heavily pure math. For those of us still remember our math days, velocity. How quickly, how many days does it take, as an example, to convert a suspect to become an MQL, a marketing qualified lead, to that of a sales accepted lead, to ultimately becoming an opportunity, and the opportunity becoming a booking and revenue. That's on the left side. That's the funnel velocity. On the right side is to really measure pure funnel conversion. Again, from the same spectrum, right? From MQL to SAL to opportunity to bookings and revenues and recurring revenue and happy customers and NPS and the likes. So what we did was that the team in preparation for this, looked back at the numbers in 2019 before we started the engagement, and before we started using the technology. And then we looked at the period, the 1 year period from April 2020 to April of 2021. And I'm really, really proud and really, really great to share these kind of data points because we truly is looking at it. Now, I would say I wanted to give DMV all the credits, but there are some other things that's happening at the same time. But the technology front is what's happening, is what makes this possible. So from the standpoint of aggregate, from MQL to opportunity, that velocity in terms of number of days improved by 30%. But let me give you a real data, not shown on the screen here. And during that same period, we looked at the velocity of MQL to SAL only. It reduces the number of days by almost half. You wonder how we do that? How does it happen? Big part of it is knowing who we have to engage and who we're engaging with, and what is the propensity, what is the scores, and how affiliated they are, how high of affinity they have to what we're talking about. On the reverse side, on the right side, and again, this could only happen if you partner with sales, and as we did in this particular case, the improvement from MQL to SAL in terms of the percentage of conversion went up triple-digit gain. And in this case, in aggregate, all the way calculating to opportunity, improved or increased by 42%. That's quite significant. And so yes, technology is the magic, it's part of the secret weapon that makes us here in our trade the most exciting in the workforce, I think. And one more thing, though, I wanted to call out, which is on the top of the screen, you now see among and beyond the quantitatives that you just shared, that I just shared and you just saw, it is also winning trusted partnership with sales, with the regions, because we operate in regions as well as corporate, as well as the business at large. That, to me, is another reason for celebrating, because we all know while sales and marketing is one single continuum, and in fact, I just had the same conversation with our general manager for Americas yesterday, but the fact that oftentimes this handoff and this collaboration may not be as smooth as we like it to be. And I think it's time to really use science and use art to pull this all together, and hence the outcome. And I'm really pleased to share that we have been able to share this story to our ELT, which I'm a member of, our executive leadership team, as well as to the regions, but more importantly, with everyone on the team, as well as the sales members and the sellers themselves, because they see it happening. And this is part of what we do in our sales modernization initiative as well. So to kind of bring it home to the ground in terms of what are some of the lessons learned, always pilot for success. I think that sometimes we have this, all a company, let's do everything all at once. I don't think it's the right model. Try, pilot, get to a repeatable model, then scale. To that extent, what I just shared with you started with North America and started with US and Canada. We have now rolled out to the rest of the company as well. And so that's a major piece of it. And secondly is engage your stakeholders early and often. This is so important because we are not here in island. We are here together with our partners, with our sales team, with different members of the marketing community, and as well as customers. And speaking of customers in our business, in the cloud business, and being the cloud, or what we refer to ourselves as the un-GSI, engagement with our customers and existing customers is critical. They are equal stakeholders as well, because it's, after all, the experience, the fanatical experience we're trying to deliver. And as I mentioned, balancing the art, we had a lot of working sessions, innovating, ideating, but there's also the reality of looking at what the data is telling us. What's that the facts telling us? What are the evidence telling us? And what's the math telling us? So as part of the parting advice, I do want to quickly just go through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. First and foremost, you have to architect a relevant story. But be careful about who you're relevant to and are you actually speaking to them. Second is we have to be business leaders. Our existence is for the business, not just for the discipline of marketing. So therefore, we have to major on business lingo. ROI in particular. We can have another session just on that. Focus on the why, the outcome, or the experience, or the satisfaction, or the engagement, or the strategic partnership. You have to focus on why we're doing something. Because if not, we could catch ourselves in rhythm of just doing things and not sure exactly why we're doing it sometimes, and on occasions, hopefully rare occasions. Second to last, think big. Because you have to be very, I think, take pride in marketing to be the thinker, the visionary, the big picture people. But at the same time, we have to start small. Go back to point 1. Fail fast is totally okay to fail because that's how we learn. And therein the conversation about dare to grow in the book that I am writing. But last and most important is you have to celebrate. Celebrate not just among the small group that created it, but celebrate with the rest of the company. Celebrate with the community. Celebrate with our customers. At the end of the day, that's how we bring the entire spectrum of the 4 multipliers, from brand to demand, to advocacy, to employee cultures, and all the way back. This is how the whole multiplication works. So with that, I really want to thank you for your time. And thank you for your time. And thank you for allowing me to share some of our point of views. And I'd like to open the floor now for some questions.
Thank you, Zarina. Definitely great insights from you here in the session. So I was taking some good notes, and I would like to take the remaining minutes we have in the session to cover a couple of questions I have. And I'm sure also the folks in the audience have some also good questions for you. So let me start with a couple of things. You covered the importance of being relevant, and I couldn't think of a better driver than personalization, actually. So from my experience, I see customers leveraging intent data to drive personalization. So they can know what are the solutions their target accounts are interested in, and also what stage of the buyer's journey they are in. However, companies also tend to deal with data and tech silos, which is bringing more complexity for them to engage in a coordinated way across channels. So what do you think is the main challenge other marketing leaders could potentially face when looking to personalize the customer journey?
Well, thanks, Andre, for that question. I think of 2 thoughts as you were just going through the question. the first thought, of course, is we have to know who we're trying to be relevant to, right? And personalization is all about true personalization, which is, and I remember many, many years ago when I was at IBM, we have a customer, in fact, it was Cathay Pacific, who really did a study with us together. And we talk about what does it mean to be personalized? And I thought, I think it was their CIO years ago, bring forth this perfect words, which is, it's all about marketing to one. That's the outcome. That the desire is that if I'm talking or whatever that content we may be serving up, the beautiful and the most success would be for the person receiving it to feel like it's just marketing for that person. It's nobody else but Andres. It's nobody else but Zarina, if that's who you're trying to be relevant to. So that's the one end of the spectrum. How do we make it feel unique and special and personalized? On the other spectrum, as you were talking about, I think one of the major challenges that I've seen, and we haven't quite perfected that in the industry, is how do you truly have a seamless, and I don't even like the word integrated, because integrated sounds like you have to put things together, but truly seamless, so that at whatever point that you're engaging with the targets, they know and you know which we're thinking and what we're thinking. That is like the ultimate matrix of marketing, if you will. And I think we still have a lot of work to do on that front. And having a platform approach certainly help, and having single source of truth certainly help. But that's the starting point. And what insights are we pulling out from it? And what are we applying? I think the applying piece is important to turn that personalization truly powerful and not just the mechanics. That would be my instantaneous thinking as to both the opportunity as well as the challenge.
Absolutely. Sounds good. So also, there is no doubt that the buyer's journey has become digital. And of course, there's some challenges that come across with that transformation. So on one side, buyers want privacy, but they also want to be engaged with relevant experiences, just like you mentioned before. I'm just curious to hear your opinion in terms of what should be the main focus for B2B companies who are looking to accelerate their digital engagement. Typically, what we recommend is to start slow and take it through a crawl, walk, run approach type of thing, where they're going to start with one channel. And as they grow, they can keep expanding their reach within multiple channels until they become omnichannel, which is like the holy grail. But I don't know, what are your thoughts in terms of what is the main focus areas they should start thinking of whenever they're approaching their digital engagement strategy?
Yeah, two thoughts off the cuff. I think first is that we should not be thinking of digital strategy independent of the overall engagement, the omni engagement experience. Because while I think it depends on the businesses as well, some businesses are still going to be heavily non-digital and others are going to be heavily digital. The mix, the magic of finding the right mix, if you will, of digital plus ABC 1, 2, 3, what other means that you wanted to engage, and the time, as you talked about earlier on buyer's journey, on the journey of how they engage. At what time do they have preference on how to be engaged? I think that's truly the Ivana in terms of what omnipresence would be in my book. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think that you highlighted in terms of the different channels, and I oftentimes advise kind of like my team is that we shouldn't think about what channels we think would be the right channels. We should turn it around and say, of the profile or the personas or the target whom we're trying to be relevant, where do they hang? Where are their water holes? And therefore, what would be the preferred channel of them engaging? I think that's the learning that years back that I remember when I was still at IBM, when we were doing a program, and there was the aha moment to me to say, we should not invite people to come to us. Well, these are all, in that case, it was all database administrators. We should go to where they hang. This group of people hang in this associations, they hang in the, so we should go to them as opposed to asking them to come to us. And that to me is the other part of why it's so exciting to be in marketing right now, is we have the ability to tune. It's almost like go back to the Matrix movies, that's like you can really put all these things together and then all of a sudden, boom, that's the experience we're trying to create. But you have to be, you have to be true to your brand. You have to be true to being consistent. And like I said, at Rackspace, we're always about being fanatical and delivering that fanatical experience. You also have to check mark and say, are we doing that? And what does it mean? And can we continue to make sure that we continue to raise the bar?
Absolutely, absolutely. Earlier in your presentation, you provided a pretty interesting question in terms of whether we should be more inclined for the technology side or for the artist side and whatnot. And I'm sure all folks on the audience are probably wondering right now, what's the right balance? So let me ask you this now. What do you think is the right balance? And if you could also share what's Zarina's balance between those two elements, that'd be super insightful.
Well, that was, I love the last part of your question. I haven't thought about that myself. So let me start with that one. I happen to believe that if in my own world, I think I'm more like 60-40, maybe 65-35, 65 technologist and 35 being the artist. It's not to, I think it depends on what industries and what businesses we represent and the culture that your team and your customers embraces as well. I happen to lean on the side that because data is critical. I mean, they're in your whole, CDP strategy is all about, how do I make sense of all this information that is in one place? That is very much the core of science and, math 101, right? So we have to have that ability. So I would really appeal, anybody who is trying to think about what kind of career do I want to build, just kind of make sure that you have that kind of affinity. And second is that I think it's also not about just the balance. Balance, kind of like balance of life balance or work-life balance. It isn't it isn't a linear thing to say it has to be 40-60 or 30-70 or whatever. It is depending, it's situational, right? Depending on who we're trying to engage with, if they're in that particular environment or that particular setup, EQ is more important than getting the science right and getting the algorithms right, then we have to make sure that we know how to tune. And maybe it all comes down to agile marketing, right? It's all coming down to being flexible and being relevant.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Zarina, thank you so much for joining us. I think we're running out of time. If folks on the audience still have some questions, please submit them in the chat and we will make sure to reach out back to you with some comments. And stay tuned because we still got some great content for tomorrow. So hope to see you all there and talk to you soon. Thanks, Zarina.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.